Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name is Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. More than 150 active firefighters and other 20 members of the Nebraska military being sent to the area near Broken Bow to help with ongoing fires. The Eureka Valley Fire, considered the West Division, that's located between the towns of Myrna and Arnold, north of Highway 92. It's burned about 4,800 acres, was about 75% contained as of Thursday evening. The East Division tackling the Lillian Fire and the East Table Road Fire. Between the two, they've consumed over 1,300 acres. They're calling that over half contained. Officials say Wednesday's dry and windy weather was the culprit in reigniting these previously controlled blazes.
In some situations, they thought they were out. What happened was we got these unseasonably warm temperatures, we had high winds hit the area, and some of those burns actually started back up. So that's been, we think, the primary cause of some of these fires has been these debris burns that started back up when folks thought they were actually out.
The extra support from Lincoln on top of other firefighters and air units will all be critical as the weather expected to turn in favor of the fire by Friday. Authorities asking people to stay away from the scene so they have the necessary access to finish the job. From fires to floods, an ice jam causing U.S. Highway 30 to be shut down in a portion of eastern Nebraska. The Department of Transportation closed the road from the Highway 81 intersection south of Columbus all the way to Silver Creek. The flooding was initiated from the north along the Loop River, which runs between Highway 22 to the north and Highway 30 to the south. Now, earlier in the day, this was the Loop River on the western edge of Columbus as ice was nearly level with the Black Bridge. Platte County Sheriff's Office said water started flowing out of the South Bank and causing some low-level flooding by mid-afternoon. A sinkhole is to blame for a street closure in southeast Nebraska. Officials in Beatrice say Weeby Street in West Beatrice shut down for a half block. There's a sinkhole in the middle of the gravel surface road there. Street superintendents say a low spot was noticed by the public. It was created by a leaking sewer line about 7 feet under the surface. A city wastewater crew says they plan to use a jet truck to excavate the area, then apply a patch to the leak.
Maintain, nourish, and support your health by visiting our Good Health, Good Life shopping tab. You'll find select multivitamins, probiotics, and more designed for you. Make the good life even better and promote your health in 2025.
A lawsuit filed by the former Kearney High School girls basketball coach, J.D. Carson, has been dismissed after depositions of parents and administrators because Carson says he now knows who made the accusations, according to court documents. Carson sought to find the truth of who said what. 30 parents were subpoenaed for depositions. 28 of them signed an affidavit saying they did not make the claims of Carson fishing for compliments from players, playing a vulgar song in a school vehicle, handing out inappropriate awards at a team banquet, taking a selfie with bikini-clad girls, and maintaining a flirtatious relationship with a player. The filing stated, quote, "Was it you?" end quote, as the sole purpose of bringing each parent in for questioning. The only two people who refused to be deposed through their lawyer said they would seek a protective order, and statements made about Carson to Kearney Public School Superintendent Jason Mundorf were privileged. Those two parents, Amber and John Garner. Amber was the original defendant in the lawsuit filed last February. Over the course of deposition, Mundorf, meanwhile, said all of the accusations came from a parent of a player on the team and cited federal law in protecting the minor from being identified. Now, the latest filing says Carson has chosen to dismiss the case for two reasons. One, perhaps most importantly, he has no legal remedy against KPS. Two, if he did proceed, he said, quote, he'd be forced to bring his former players' children into this litigation. Unlike the powers that stood against him, Mr. Carson is not willing to weaponize the children that played for him to achieve vindication. One interrogation of a child is one too many, end quote. The paperwork and Mr. Mundorf both admitted during deposition the investigation was only conducted through the claims of one parent and interviews with students. As for Carson, he's still coaching girls basketball in Amherst now. His team preparing for a district final on Friday against Silver Lake. A state senator sending another warning to a Nebraska Natural Resources district. Figure out flood control or the state is stepping in. Senator Rob Dover of Norfolk sent a letter to the Lower Elkhorn Natural Resources District on Thursday. He was invited to visit the LENRD meeting but couldn't make it because of the legislative session. The subject? Dover's LB 695, which would force the NRD to build a dam and provide flood control measures in Battle Creek. The Battle Creek flood control has been a point of contention for the LENRD for years. In his letter, Dover cited an engineering report done 5 years ago. Dover said he doesn't want his bill to pass. He says he'd rather see the LENRD solve flood control for the Madison County town on their own. But he also threatened another potential bill, which would allow residents to petition the state to create a board that would render a decision binding to that NRD. Dover said he'd withdraw all these ideas if the LENRD agrees to follow the engineering report. A central Nebraska school district proposing a bond project which will go toward upgrades that school officials say will make them safer and more modern. Peter Rice has more.
The Ravenna Public School System is asking residents to vote in March on a proposed bond aimed at improving the school's facilities with a focus on safety, inclusion, and modernizing learning spaces. The targeted areas include the career, agriculture, and technical education classrooms, in addition to a new weight room and improved special education facilities. The proposal also includes the construction of a central, more secure entrance for students, which will greatly limit the travel between buildings during the school day. Superintendent Ken Schroeder said about 150 students travel back and forth several times a day between the main building and detached classrooms.
Getting everybody under one roof, you can imagine if we're having any type of a situation where there might be an intruder or an unwanted guest on the grounds and we need to secure our perimeter, it's a lot more functional to do that if we're all under one roof and we don't have that separation between the current north buildings and the main building.
Schroeder added that residents will likely see a decrease in the school's district tax levy for the first year after the bond passes. The district's levy rate is expected to drop from 71 cents to around 68.8 cents due to the removal of funds from certain accounts used for building improvements.
If the taxpayers approve the bond, then we'll have the money to do the needed upgrades and we'll be able to greatly decrease the tax levy in the Qualified Capital Purpose Undertaking Fund and in the Special Building Fund, which will have an impact on the overall levy. So even though we're adding some bond debt, we're removing some tax levies in other funds, which is going to ultimately bring that total levy amount down by a couple cents.
And if the bond is approved in the March vote, construction is set to begin in September of 2025, with an expected completion date of December of 2026.
Well, in an effort to try to enhance school safety, Pierce Public Schools hosted a dynamic school shooter simulation exercise Thursday. It brought together local fire and police along with EMS and district officials. Participants shared their insights and strategies to try to ensure the safety of students in the event of a crisis.
There's universal school training that the vast majority of school districts in Nebraska use, and we'll continue with that. But one thing I learned today is we just need to keep things updated and talk more than we do.
Well, a lot of times they have lockout, I think they called it, but anyways, a lot of them is shelter in place and wait for law enforcement to allow them to come out of their rooms. Fight or flight, they've talked about that. If you can get out, please do, run. Find safety.
I believe we just need to be prepared the best that we can. Law enforcement have their role, the fire department has their role, we have our role, and if we're all prepared and all can work together, we can have the best outcome for our students.
Reiser says she hopes to hold similar events with other schools in Region 11, which covers Madison, Pierce, and Antelope counties. The state capitol paying tribute to those who were housed at the Genoa boarding school Thursday. The Capitol lit up the color of orange, honoring Native American children and their descendants who were forced to assimilate into Western culture as part of a federal policy during the time period. The industrial school in Genoa operated for 50 years before closing in 1934. The color orange, symbolic of the loss of freedom, identity, and culture experienced by the children in those schools. Now, the Nebraska legislature had designated February 20th as the annual Day of Remembrance, but bad weather forced the delay of the event until this past Thursday. And it was a final goodbye for Nebraska State Patrol Trooper Kyle McAcy, laid to rest Thursday after he was killed working a crash scene on the interstate. A procession started at the West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home, made its way south to Liberty First Credit Union Arena. Among those who spoke at the podium about McAcy, Governor Jim Pillen, Colonel John Baldick with the State Patrol, members of McAcy's family, and fellow officers. Lieutenant Eric Kaufman said he met McAcy when the fallen trooper started with the State Patrol a decade ago. He said McAcy was a loving son, friend, and a great Nebraskan.
Dedicated public servant. He loved serving the citizens of Troop A and Greater Nebraska as well, and loved to teach, loved to try to help people, and he would be very happy with the outpouring of support today.
McAcy was working a scene on I-80 on February 17th when he was struck by a snowplow. He died at the scene. You can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com and click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. This is News Channel Nebraska.